Commander Zarath pressed her four-fingered hand against the cool metal of the observation deck's viewport, watching as another section of the outer defensive ring exploded in brilliant orange flames. The Kethmaran ships were relentless, their dark hulls cutting through space like predators closing in on wounded prey. Her people, the peaceful Veltar, had never been warriors. They were scientists, philosophers, artists who had spent centuries perfecting their understanding of the universe rather than learning how to destroy it. The bridge behind her buzzed with desperate activity. Officers with pale blue skin and large, expressive eyes worked frantically at their stations, their normally calm demeanor shattered by 3 months of constant siege. The Kethmaran Dominion had arrived without warning, demanding total surrender and the enslavement of every Veltar in their star system. When the peaceful overtures failed, the bombardment began. "Commander," called out Navigator Pelwin, his voice tight with strain. "The eastern defensive platform has gone silent. We're detecting debris fields where Station 7 used to be." Zarath closed her eyes briefly. Station 7 housed over 10,000 civilians, families who had volunteered to help coordinate the defense efforts. Gone in an instant, vaporized by weapons that turned matter into energy with terrifying efficiency. She turned back to face her crew, forcing her expression to remain steady despite the grief threatening to overwhelm her. "What's the status of our distress signals?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would bring no comfort. Communications Officer Drinka looked up from her console, her large eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Still broadcasting on all emergency frequencies, Commander. We've sent detailed requests for assistance to the Galactic Council, the Ethereal Alliance, the Crystalline Confederacy, and every other major power within 50 light-years of our position." "And their responses?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Drinka's shoulders sagged as she spoke. "The Council sent their thoughts and prayers but reminded us that they cannot intervene in conflicts involving non-member species. The Alliance claims they're dealing with internal disputes and cannot spare any resources." "The Confederacy." She paused, swallowing hard. "The Confederacy suggested we consider the Kethmoran terms for surrender." A bitter laugh escaped Zarath's throat. The galactic community that had welcomed them with open arms when they first achieved faster-than-light travel now turned their backs when help was desperately needed. The Veltar had always been seen as useful for their scientific contributions but ultimately expendable when real conflict arose. The ship shuddered as another wave of Kethmaran missiles struck their defensive barriers. The energy shields that had once seemed impenetrable now flickered like dying candles, their power levels dropping with each successive attack. Chief Engineer Mordell's voice crackled over the intercom, stress evident in every word. "Commander, we're down to 30% shield strength. The power cores are overheating, and we've lost primary coolant flow to sections 12 through 18. At this rate, we have maybe 6 hours before total shield failure." 6 hours. Zarath felt the weight of that number settle over her like a heavy blanket. 6 hours before the Kethmaran warships broke through their final defenses. 6 hours before her people faced either death or a slavery so complete it would erase their culture, their identity, everything that made them who they were. She walked to the central command chair, its familiar curves offering little comfort. Around her, the bridge crew continued their work with admirable dedication despite knowing they were likely living their final hours. These were good people, brilliant minds, who had devoted their lives to exploration and discovery. They deserved better than this. "Drinka, expand our distress signal beyond the major powers. Send it to every species, every faction, every independent trader or mercenary group within range. Someone out there might have both the capability and the conscience to help." "Commander," Pelwin interjected softly, "the Outer Rim territories are mostly unknown species. Many haven't even achieved galactic recognition. The chances that any of them could mount an effective response against the Kethmaran fleet." "I know the odds," Zarath replied, settling into her chair. "But we've exhausted every conventional option. If there's even the smallest chance that someone unexpected might answer our call, we have to try." The next few hours passed in a blur of increasingly desperate activity. Reports flooded in from across their defensive perimeter, each one painting a darker picture than the last. The Kethmaran forces had adapted to every defensive strategy the Veltar employed, their tactics shifting with mechanical precision to counter each new approach. It was like fighting an enemy that could predict their every move. Dr. Ventara, the chief xenobiologist, made her way onto the bridge during what might have been their final hour. Her normally pristine white coat was stained with coolant fluid and burn marks, evidence of her efforts to help with emergency repairs throughout the ship. "Commander," she said quietly, "I've been analyzing the Kethmaran attack patterns, trying to understand their strategic thinking. They're not just trying to defeat us. They're studying us. Every defensive measure we take, every weapon we deploy, they're cataloging it all. This isn't just conquest for them. It's research." The implications chilled Zareth to her core. If the Kethmaran were using this battle as a testing ground for future conflicts, then every other peaceful species in the galaxy was in danger. The techniques they learned here would be applied elsewhere, refined and perfected until no one could stand against them. "Have we received any responses to our expanded distress calls?" she asked. Though hope had become a fragile thing in her chest, Drinka checked her console, scrolling through an endless list of communication attempts. A few automated replies from trading posts. Some well wishes from species too far away to help. There was one message from a group calling themselves freelance peacekeepers. But they were honest about not having the firepower to engage a full Kethmaran fleet. What about the unknown species from the Outer Rim? Static, mostly. A few curiosity pings asking for more information, but nothing substantive. "Commander, I don't think—" Her words were cut off as the ship lurched violently to one side. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power grid fluctuated under the strain of another massive bombardment. When the shaking stopped, Chief Engineer Mordell's voice came through the intercom, barely audible over background alarms. "All sections, prepare for imminent shield failure. We're down to 8% power reserves." "I'm sorry, Commander. There's nothing more we can do." Zareth stood slowly, looking out at the Kethmaran fleet as it closed in for the kill. Hundreds of dark ships formed perfect attack formations, their weapons charging for what would surely be the final assault. In a few minutes, it would all be over. Centuries of Veltar civilization, reduced to debris floating in the void. She activated the ship-wide communication system, knowing that these might be the last words she ever spoke to her people. "Citizens of Veltar Prime, this is Commander Zareth. In moments, our shields will fail, and the enemy will break through our defenses. I want you all to know that you have shown courage beyond measure in these dark times. You have proven that the spirit of our people cannot be broken, even in the face of impossible odds. Remember who we are, remember what we stand for, and know that somewhere in the galaxy, others will learn of our sacrifice and carry forward the values we hold dear." As she spoke, something flickered on Drinka's communications panel. The young officer frowned, adjusting her controls to filter out interference. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange. It's very faint, but there's a transmission coming from the edge of the system." Another automated response? "No. This is different. It's—" Drinka's eyes widened as she isolated the signal. "It's a real-time communication. Someone's actually responding to our distress call." Hope flickered in Zareth's chest, though she tried to suppress it. "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled with static before a voice came through, speaking in heavily accented but understandable Galactic standard. The tone was calm, professional, with an underlying note of determination that seemed almost out of place given their dire circumstances. "Veltar Defense Fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Chen aboard the UES Prometheus. We received your distress signal and are en route to your position. Estimated arrival time is 47 minutes. Hold your position and maintain your shields as long as possible. Help is coming." The bridge fell silent. No one had ever heard of the species that called themselves humans, or their united Earth systems. According to the galactic databases, there was no record of any civilization by that name achieving spaceflight capability. "Unknown vessel," Zareth replied, her voice barely steady. "This is Commander Zareth of the Veltar Defense Force. We appreciate your response, but you should know that we face a full Kethmaran battle fleet." This is not a situation that can be resolved with a single ship, no matter how well-intentioned your offer of assistance might be. The response came back immediately, and this time there was something that might have been amusement in the human's voice. Commander Zarath, I should clarify something. The Prometheus isn't alone. The entire Third Fleet is with us, along with some friends from the Colonial Defense Force and the Mars Expeditionary Unit. We've dealt with bullies before. Before Zarath could respond, Navigator Pelwin called out in astonishment. Commander, I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts, dozens of them. The energy readings they're enormous. On the main display screen, space itself seemed to tear open as ship after ship emerged from faster-than-light travel. They were unlike anything in the galactic databases, their designs angular and aggressive, where most civilized species preferred curved, aesthetic forms. But it wasn't their appearance that took Zarath's breath away, it was their number. What looked like an entire fleet materialized in the space of minutes, their formations spreading out in perfect tactical order. The lead ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the largest Veltar vessel, its hull bristling with weapons that seemed designed for one purpose: overwhelming destruction of enemy targets. Veltar Defense Fleet, came Admiral Chen's voice again. This is the human fleet. We're taking position between you and the Keth Moran forces. Stand by for tactical coordination. And Commander Zarath? Yes, Admiral? The Keth Moran fleet responded to the human arrival with typical efficiency, their dark ships wheeling around to face this new threat while maintaining their siege positions. General Vraktos, commanding the Dominion forces from his flagship, studied the newcomers with cold calculation. His species had conquered 17 systems in the past decade, and each victory had taught them that most galactic civilizations were fundamentally weak, preferring negotiation and compromise to the harsh realities of warfare. Analysis, he commanded, his segmented mandibles clicking in annoyance. These humans had disrupted what should have been a simple mop-up operation. Unknown vessel configurations, General, reported his tactical officer. The ships appear to be heavily armed. Unknown vessel configuration, but the designs are primitive. Angular construction suggests a species that prioritizes function over form. Estimated technology level suggests they achieved spaceflight recently, within the last few centuries at most. Vraktos allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Young species were often eager to prove themselves, but they lacked the experience and tactical sophistication of established powers. Numbers: 47 vessels of various sizes. Their largest ship measures approximately 1,800 meters, but even combined, they're significantly outnumbered by our forces. Then they'll learn the price of interfering in Dominion business. Signal the fleet to engage the newcomers. Once we've eliminated them, we can return to forcing the Veltar surrender. On the bridge of the UES Prometheus, Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical display with the calm focus of someone who had spent 30 years in military service. At 55, she had commanded fleets in 3 major conflicts and countless smaller engagements, earning her reputation through competence rather than politics. Her graying hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her weathered face showed the kind of confidence that came from experience. Ma'am, the hostile fleet is changing formation. Looks like they're preparing to engage us directly, reported Commander Jackson. Her tactical officer, Chen, nodded, studying the enemy movements. Predictable. They see us as the immediate threat and want to eliminate us before returning to their siege. Captain Morrison, signal the fleet to implement Formation 7. Let's see what these Keth Moran are really capable of. The human ships moved with a precision that surprised both the Veltar and Keth Moran observers. Unlike the rigid formations favored by most galactic militaries, the human fleet flowed like water. Individual ships supporting each other while maintaining the flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances. It was organized chaos, beautiful in its apparent simplicity. Admiral Chen, came Commander Zarath's voice over the communication channel. Our sensors indicate the Keth Moran fleet is significantly larger than your forces. Perhaps we should coordinate a fighting withdrawal to— Negative, Commander, Chen interrupted gently but firmly. We didn't come here to run away. Besides, Numbers aren't everything in space combat. Lieutenant Torres, open a channel to the Keth Moran flagship. Ma'am? You heard me. I want to talk to whoever's in charge over there. The channel opened with a burst of static before General Vraktos's harsh voice filled the bridge. Unknown species, you have interfered in a lawful Dominion operation. Withdraw immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Chen leaned back in her command chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. General, I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, of the United Earth Systems. I'm afraid I can't comply with your request. You see, we humans have this annoying habit of helping people who ask for it. The Veltar sent out a distress call. And here we are. You are severely outnumbered, human. Your primitive ships stand no chance against Dominion technology. This is your final warning. 1 pot of 47. Primitive? Chen chuckled. General, you haven't done your homework. Lieutenant Torres, transmit our credentials to the Keth Moran fleet. Let them see what they're dealing with. The data package that reached the Keth Moran flagship contained information that made Vraktos pause. Combat records, tactical analyses, after-action reports from conflicts spanning decades. The humans had fought wars against artificial intelligences that had tried to exterminate all organic life. They had battled insectoid swarms that devoured entire ecosystems. They had even gone to war with themselves, perfecting the art of destruction through centuries of nearly constant conflict. Impressive records, Vraktos admitted, though his tone remained dismissive. However, past victories against other primitive species mean little against Dominion might. You have 5 minutes to withdraw before we open fire. Actually, General, I think you misunderstood something, Chen replied, her voice taking on a harder edge. Those weren't requests. Commander Morrison, signal all ships. Weapons free. Show them why humans don't make empty threats. The human fleet opened fire simultaneously, and the Keth Moran quickly realized they had made a fundamental miscalculation. The energy signatures alone were staggering beam weapons that cut through space with surgical precision, missile systems that deployed dozens of independently targeted warheads, and something the Keth Moran had never encountered before. Kinetic bombardment weapons that accelerated solid projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. The UES Wellington, a heavy cruiser, demonstrated the effectiveness of human military doctrine by targeting 3 Keth Moran destroyers simultaneously, rather than the inefficient energy weapons favored by most galactic civilizations. The Wellington used a combination of particle beams for precision strikes and mass driver cannons for devastating kinetic impact. The first destroyer's shields failed under the concentrated assault, and the follow-up kinetic rounds tore through its hull like paper. Impossible, breathed the Keth Moran tactical officer, watching his sensors register impossible energy readings. Their weapons are operating at 97% efficiency. Our best systems barely achieve 70%. Vraktos snarled, his confidence wavering for the first time in years. All ships, concentrate fire on their largest vessel. Bring down their command ship. 24 Keth Moran warships turned their weapons on the Prometheus, unleashing a coordinated barrage that should have overwhelmed any defensive system. The human flagship's shields flared brilliant blue-white as they absorbed the incoming energy. But instead of failing under the assault, they seemed to grow stronger. Adaptive shielding, Chen explained calmly to her bridge crew, though she knew the Keth Moran were probably monitoring their communications. One of the advantages of fighting AIs for a decade, you learn to build defenses that actually improve under fire. The Prometheus returned fire with its main batteries, and the Keth Moran formation learned why humans had developed such devastating weapons. Each beam wasn't just an energy discharge. It was a carefully modulated pulse designed to find and exploit weaknesses in enemy shield frequencies. The lead Keth Moran cruiser's defensive barriers collapsed in seconds, leaving it vulnerable to the follow-up missile barrage. From the Veltar command ship, Zareth watched the battle unfold with growing amazement. She had studied military history as part of her command training, but this was unlike anything in the galactic databases. The humans fought with a combination of ruthless efficiency and tactical creativity that seemed almost artistic in its execution. "Commander," called out Navigator Pelwin, The human ships are using formations I've never seen before. They're supporting each other. But every vessel maintains complete independence of action. How do they coordinate without rigid command structures? Dr. Ventara, who had remained on the bridge to observe the battle, provided an answer that surprised everyone. They're not just coordinating, they're improvising. Look at their communication patterns: constant data exchange, tactical updates, suggested modifications to the battle plan. They're treating this like a collaborative effort, rather than a top-down command structure. The human approach was indeed unlike anything the Kethmoran had encountered. Each ship captain was empowered to make tactical decisions based on local conditions, while the fleet as a whole maintained overall strategic coherence. When the frigate UES Dakota noticed a gap in the enemy formation, its captain didn't wait for orders, he exploited it immediately, leading 3 other ships in a flanking maneuver that caught an entire Kethmoran squadron off guard. All vessels, this is Admiral Chen, came the calm voice over the human fleet communications. Phase 1, complete. Initiating harassment pattern, Delta. Remember, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to convince them that continuing this fight is a very bad idea. What followed could only be described as a masterclass in psychological warfare. Rather than pressing their apparent advantage, the human fleet began what could only be called an elaborate dance around the Kethmoran forces. Ships would appear from unexpected angles, deliver devastating strikes, and then disappear before effective retaliation could be mounted. It wasn't random chaos, it was carefully orchestrated pressure, designed to break enemy morale. The UES Thermopylae, a destroyer, demonstrated this approach by using its superior maneuverability to stay just outside the effective range of Kethmoran weapons, while peppering their largest ships with long-range missiles. Each attack was precisely calculated to cause maximum psychological impact, with minimal actual damage. Shield failures, communication disruptions, non-critical system overloads, 1,000 small problems that created the impression of complete tactical superiority. General Vraktos found himself facing something no Kethmoran commander had ever encountered. An enemy that seemed to be toying with them. His forces outnumbered the humans 3-1. His ships were larger. His weapons should have been superior. Yet somehow, these newcomers were making his entire fleet look like amateur cadets. "Sir," his communications officer reported, voice tight with stress, "we're receiving tactical data from the human fleet. They're showing us exactly how they're dismantling our formations." "What?" "Look at your tactical display, General. They've highlighted every weakness in our deployment, every gap in our coverage, every tactical error we've made in the last hour. It's like they're giving us a lesson in how badly we're losing this fight." Vraktos stared at the data, feeling something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. The humans weren't just defeating them, they were demonstrating that they could defeat them while barely trying. Every move his fleet made was being countered before it was fully implemented. Every tactical adaptation was being predicted and neutralized. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication channel again, still calm and professional. "General Vraktos, I think we've made our point. Your forces are impressive, but you're fighting a defensive war against people who've spent centuries learning how to attack. This is going to end badly for you, and we'd prefer to avoid unnecessary casualties on all sides. What are you proposing, human?" "Simple. Withdraw your forces from Veltar space. Find something better to do with your time than terrorizing peaceful civilizations. In return, we'll let you leave with your ships and your dignity relatively intact." "And if we refuse?" Chen's response carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Then we'll show you why the galaxy is about to become a much more dangerous place for anyone who thinks they can bully their neighbors without consequences. Your choice, General." The Kethmoran fleet held position for several long minutes, weapons armed but not firing. Vraktos was making calculations, weighing pride against pragmatism, conquest against survival. Around him, his officers waited for orders that would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but possibly the future of Dominion expansion. Finally, he activated the fleet communication system. "This is not over, humans. The Dominion has a long memory." "So do we, General," Chen replied. "And we're very good at teaching lessons to people who threaten our friends. Safe travels." As the Kethmaran fleet began its withdrawal, forming up for the jump to hyperspace, Admiral Chen turned her attention to the Veltar ships that had watched the entire engagement in stunned silence. Her expression softened as she opened a direct channel to Commander Zarath. "Commander, this is Admiral Chen. How are your people holding up?" Zarath found herself struggling for words. In less than 2 hours, these unknown humans had accomplished what seemed impossible. They had faced down the most feared military force in the local region and made it back down without firing a single shot in anger. "Admiral, we don't know how to thank you. What you've done here today. You don't need to thank us, Commander. We do this because it's the right thing to do. But I think it's time we had a proper conversation. Would you be willing to receive a diplomatic delegation? There are things about the galaxy that are about to change, and your people deserve to know what's coming. Nobody fights alone on our watch." The meeting took place aboard the UES Prometheus 3 hours after the Kethmaran withdrawal. Commander Zarath had never seen the inside of an alien starship before, and the differences were immediately apparent. Where Veltar ships prioritized comfort and aesthetic harmony, human vessels were clearly built for function and efficiency. Every surface served a purpose. Every corridor was designed for rapid movement during crisis situations. Admiral Chen greeted the Veltar delegation in what the humans called their conference room, a space that managed to be both practical and oddly welcoming. The walls displayed star charts and tactical information, but there were also personal touches, photographs of Earth, artwork that seemed to capture the beauty of distant worlds, and what appeared to be handwritten letters from families back home. "Please, sit wherever you're comfortable," Chen said, gesturing to chairs that had been adjusted to accommodate Veltar physiology. "I know this has been a difficult day for your people. How are the casualty reports looking?" Dr. Ventara, who had joined the diplomatic party, consulted her datapad. "Thanks to your intervention, we lost only the outer defense stations. 14,000 people in total. But it could have been so much worse. Without your arrival, we were facing complete annihilation within hours." "I'm sorry for your losses," Chen said, and her sincerity was unmistakable. "Every life matters, and we wish we could have arrived sooner." Zarath studied the human admiral, trying to understand the woman who had just changed the fate of her entire species. Chen appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with graying hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years of difficult decisions. But there was something else there, a kind of weary determination that suggested she had seen too much suffering and had dedicated her life to preventing more. "Admiral," Zarath began carefully, "forgive my directness, but we need to understand what just happened here. Your species isn't in any of our galactic databases. Until today, we had no idea humans even existed. Yet you arrived with a fleet that easily outmatched the most feared military force in this region. How is that possible?" Chen leaned back in her chair, considering her words. "That's a fair question, Commander, and you deserve an honest answer. Humanity has been spacefaring for about 4 centuries now, but we've been deliberately avoiding contact with the major galactic powers. We've been observing, learning, studying, figuring out how this galaxy works before we decided how we wanted to fit into it." Chen activated a holographic display that showed a map of local space, with human colonies marked in blue and other civilizations in various colors. "We've established settlements in about 30 systems, all in regions that the galactic community considers uninhabitable or unimportant. Desert worlds, radiation-bombarded systems, asteroid fields that most species can't exploit effectively." Dr. Ventara leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. "That's remarkable. Some of those systems would require technological solutions we haven't even theorized. How do you survive in such harsh environments?" "Humans are very good at adapting to difficult circumstances," Chen replied with what might have been understatement. "We've had a lot of practice. Our home world isn't exactly what you'd call hospitable compared to most garden worlds." The hologram shifted to show Earth, and the Veltar delegation gasped collectively. Violent storm systems covered vast portions of the surface. Tectonic activity that would terrify most species was visible as glowing lines of volcanic activity, and the atmospheric composition readings showed a level of oxygen that would be toxic to many galactic civilizations. Your people evolved on that? Zareth asked in amazement. And learned to love it, Chen confirmed. But more importantly, we learned to fight for it. You see, Commander, human history is essentially one long story of conflict. We've been at war with each other, with our environment, with diseases, with artificial intelligences we created, with hostile alien species we've encountered in the Outer Rim. War, for humans, isn't an aberration. It's a fundamental part of who we are. The admission sent a chill through the Veltar delegation, but Chen continued before they could react. That probably sounds terrifying to a peaceful species like yours. And honestly, it should. Humans are very, very good at violence. We've spent thousands of years perfecting the art of destroying our enemies efficiently and completely. We've built weapons that could sterilize entire worlds, developed strategies that could break the will of civilizations that vastly outnumber us. Smarts. Chen paused, studying their faces. But here's the thing that makes humans different from species like the Kethmoran. We learned something else during all those centuries of warfare. We learned that the strongest warriors are the ones who know when not to fight. We learned that true strength comes from protecting those who can't protect themselves. The holographic display changed again, showing documentation from dozens of human military interventions across the Outer Rim. Peaceful trading posts defended against pirate raids. Exploration teams rescued from hostile environments. Entire colonies evacuated when natural disasters threatened their survival. For the past 50 years, Chen explained, human fleets have been quietly providing security for anyone who needed it, as long as they weren't trying to hurt anyone else. We've broken up slavery rings, stopped genocidal campaigns, and made sure that the galaxy's bullies know there are consequences for their actions. Zareth felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. That's why the Kethmoran backed down so quickly. They've encountered humans before. Not directly, but they've heard the stories. Word spreads quickly when entire military fleets suddenly develop a healthy respect for unknown aliens from the galactic fringe. The Kethmoran learned about human capabilities secondhand from other aggressive species who made the mistake of attacking our friends. Dr. Ventara was studying her own datapad, cross-referencing information with what Chen had revealed. This explains several mysterious incidents over the past decade. Military operations that were suddenly abandoned, aggressive expansions that stopped without apparent reason, entire fleets that simply disappeared from conflict zones. We prefer to work quietly when possible, Chen confirmed. But sometimes, like today, we need to be more direct. The Kethmoran were preparing to use your people as a testing ground for new weapons and tactics. We couldn't allow that to continue. The implications were staggering. For years, the galactic community had assumed that the balance of power was fixed, controlled by ancient civilizations and vast bureaucratic structures. Now they learned that an unknown species had been quietly reshaping that balance, protecting the weak and checking the ambitions of the strong. What happens now? Zareth asked, voicing the question that everyone was thinking. Chen stood and walked to the viewport, gazing out at the stars beyond. That depends on what your people want, Commander. We can return to the shadows and pretend this encounter never happened. Your people can go back to dealing with galactic politics the way you always have. Or we can be friends. Real friends. The kind who watch out for each other and work together to make sure that bullies like the Kethmoran think twice before threatening innocent people. The offer hung in the air between them, heavy with possibilities. Zareth understood that this was more than just an alliance proposal. It was an invitation to fundamentally change how the Veltar related to the galaxy at large. Admiral, if we accept your friendship, what would that mean in practical terms? Chen turned back to face them, her expression serious. It means that no one threatens your people without answering to humanity. It means shared technology, mutual defense agreements, and the security that comes from knowing that you're not alone in a dangerous galaxy. But it also means accepting that humans do things differently than most galactic civilizations. How so? We don't believe in neutrality when innocent lives are at stake. We don't accept that might makes right. And we absolutely refuse to stand by and watch while peaceful species get conquered, because the galactic powers are too civilized to dirty their hands with actual fighting. Dr. Ventara spoke up, her scientific mind already working through the possibilities. The technological exchange alone would be revolutionary. Human adaptation techniques, defensive systems, propulsion technology that allows settlement of previously uninhabitable worlds. Admiral, you're offering to change our entire civilization. We're offering to help you become stronger while remaining who you are, Chen corrected. Humans have learned that survival and compassion aren't mutually exclusive. You don't have to become warriors to be safe. You just need friends who are willing to be warriors for you. Over the next several hours, the conversation expanded to include technical experts from both species. Human engineers shared innovations in shield technology and defensive systems, while Veltar scientists offered insights into peaceful applications of energy manipulation and biological research. It quickly became clear that both civilizations would benefit enormously from cooperation. But more than technology was being exchanged. The humans brought with them a different philosophy, a way of looking at galactic politics that prioritized ethics over convenience. Where the established powers saw the Kethmoran situation as an unfortunate but inevitable result of natural competition between species, humans saw it as a moral crisis that demanded action. There are others like you, Zareth realized as the meetings continued. Other peaceful species under threat from aggressive neighbors. The Crystalline Confederacy mentioned internal disputes. Those aren't civil wars, are they? No, Chen confirmed grimly. They're dealing with the same kind of expansion pressure that threatened your people. The difference is that the crystalline leadership thinks they can manage the situation through negotiation and compromise. And you disagree? I think the galaxy is changing, Commander. The old ways of handling aggression through diplomacy and economic pressure are breaking down. Species like the Kethmoran see that weakness and are exploiting it. The established powers are too invested in maintaining the status quo to recognize that their approach isn't working anymore. The full scope of what the humans were proposing began to emerge. This wasn't just about helping individual species defend themselves, it was about creating an entirely new power structure based on mutual protection rather than domination. You're talking about revolution, Zareth said quietly. We're talking about evolution, Chen corrected. The galaxy can be better than it is. Peaceful species shouldn't have to choose between submission and extinction. Scientific advancement shouldn't be held hostage by military might, and civilizations that want to hurt others shouldn't be allowed to do so just because they have bigger fleets. As the Prometheus prepared to depart Veltar space, taking with it detailed communication protocols and the promise of future cooperation, Zareth found herself standing on the observation deck where this had all begun. The stars looked the same, but everything else had changed. Her people were no longer alone, no longer helpless in the face of galactic predators. Dr. Ventara joined her, carrying datapads filled with new scientific possibilities. Commander, the humans have shared enough information to keep our research teams busy for decades. Medical technology, environmental adaptation techniques, energy systems we never imagined. They're essentially offering us a technological revolution, and all they ask in return is friendship. No, Ventara corrected thoughtfully. They're asking for something more valuable than that. They're asking us to believe that the galaxy can be better than it is. They're asking us to help make it better. The communication panel chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Chen. Her image appeared on the screen, transmitted from the bridge of the human flagship as it prepared for departure. Commander Zareth, it's been an honor meeting you and your people. We'll be maintaining a communication relay in this system, and human patrols will be checking on you regularly. But more than that, you now have our direct contact information. If anyone threatens your people again, or if any other peaceful species needs help, don't hesitate to call. Admiral, Zareth replied. How can we ever repay what you've done for us? Chen smiled, and for a moment, the weight of command seemed to lift from her shoulders. By doing the same thing for someone else when the time comes. That's how this works, Commander. We watch out for each other, and eventually, the entire galaxy becomes a safer place for people who just want to live in peace. As the human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a fundamentally changed galaxy, Zarath began composing a message to the galactic community. Other peaceful species deserved to know that help was available, that they were no longer alone against the predators that had terrorized them for so long. The age of helpless victims was ending. The age of human protection had begun. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, Admiral Sarah Chen was already planning humanity's next intervention, secure in the knowledge that the galaxy's bullies were about to learn that their time of unopposed aggression was finally over.